we're very proud of this as well. Pinnacle Property Solutions provides capital and donations to our foundation, which we give to other programs and 501c3s and charities. We also, Pinnacle has a very large commitment to charity. One of the things that we do is we give away homes from our for-profit business to our nonprofit. This year, our goal is to give away 50 homes in the country, and we're well on our way to doing that. Very far down the road. We're very excited to be in just the 1st of September to be where we are. So, as a matter of fact, we're going to New York in a couple of weeks to give away a home to a wounded warrior, and also a week later at a movie premiere, and at a movie premiere the week after that, so the 24th, we'll be in LA giving away another home to wounded warriors. Our goal is in October, the 13th or so, we're going to give away 10 homes to wounded warriors in Jacksonville, Florida. So we've started to embark on the military portion of this, but our goal is to be charitable givers, to give back from the blessings that we receive, and our goal again is to give away 50 homes this year. So, and this is what I do know. We're very fortunate. I think I have the best job in the whole wide world. I get to help people change their lives and change their families, and we get to help rebuild communities and families and lives. It's a tremendous blessing for us to do that. I do know it's a life-changing event. We give a family a home. You've probably never heard of that. We had never heard of that. We thought it would be a great thing to do, is to give individuals and families homes for free. So we do that all the time with single mothers and different ministries and different nonprofits that they help different groups of people. So that's why we do what we do as the Shield Foundation. Now, let's talk a little bit about how money works. I'm going to explain about the Federal Reserve a little bit and talk about a couple points, just because a lot of people, when they hear that we sell houses for $21,900, when they see that we have homes that have been in foreclosure or REOs and we have the opportunity to sell them, everybody says, a lot of the people say the same thing. Number one, there's got to be something wrong with the houses, or that's impossible, or it's too good to be true, or there's no way you can do that. So why I go through these demonstrations for a little bit, it's just to show individuals that it's really, really possible. As a matter of fact, it's a good function for a bank to clear out its inventory and sell to us, and we have that ability to do that. So it's a real thing that you can do. Let me ask you a question. The Federal Reserve. Anyone heard of the Federal Reserve? Yeah. How many people believe that the Federal Reserve is part of the federal government? How many people believe that the Federal Reserve is not part of the federal government? Yeah, a couple of them. Okay. The truth is that the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express, right? So how many of you believe the Federal Express is a government agency, right? So, okay, so the Federal Reserve is not a government agency. It is actually a private bank. It was established in 1913 as a centralized bank of the United States. They create every U.S. dollar that is in circulation today. So every U.S. dollar is a Federal Reserve note. That's important to know, because we're going to talk about the banking system and how it works, and especially how it directly affects houses and REOs. There's two ways that money is created, primarily. Number one, there's the Federal Reserve, the federal government budget. Anybody heard about budgets being talked about now in the news? So we're trying to pass a budget right now. That's the money that our government, through its Congress, agreed to borrow from the Federal Reserve every year. And it's either, and they of course pay it back with what? Our taxes, right? So, right, exactly. That's where we are now. But that's the short answer. But I'm getting there. Okay. So they supposedly pay them back with our taxes, and either they borrow enough, they balance the budgets, they borrow exactly as much as they bring in, or they borrow too much and they have a deficit. And the surplus, I think there used to be a thing called surplus, but they actually spend a pretty good more money to spend. But that's not the case anymore. So one of the ways is the federal government actually borrows its money, and for the purpose of this demonstration, just imagine, if you will, the senator goes to the Federal Reserve and he gets a check for $1 billion. So the Federal Reserve person opens up a checkbook, he opens it up, he writes a check for $1 billion, and he passes it off to the senator, whom then goes to the senator's local bank, say Bank of America. And he takes that deposit and he sticks it in the bank. Right when he does that, because it's drawn on a Federal Reserve Bank, and it's deposited into a Federal Reserve Bank, because every bank that accepts or uses U.S. dollars is a licensed charter of the Federal Reserve Bank, one bank. So lots of little branches, lots of little licenses that they operate under. So when they deposit that check, the government gets $1 billion in its checking account. It then goes out and pays the military and Social Security and Medicare and those things. When it writes those checks, it's passed that money from one account to another. When the person that's in the military gets their check and they go to Walmart, their wife goes to Walmart and buys something, just like that, you created a dollar out of thin air. That's how our economic system works. We've learned most of this stuff in high school. We just, if you were like me, you didn't pay attention a lot, and a lot of it went right over our heads. So now it's becoming very relevant, and you're hearing about it every day on the evening news. So that's one way that money is created. There's another way which directly impacts foreclosed homes and mortgages. It's through commercial paper, whether it be mortgages or commercial notes or HELOCs, but it's loans that banks make to individuals or companies. So they make those notes up and they loan money from that system. And this is how that works. The Federal Reserve Bank lends money to the local bank. And they do that based on deposits. So however much money they have, if you imagine, if you will, Joe takes his deposit of $10,000 to his local bank and he deposits it into his bank. Because that bank has $10,000 on deposit in liquid cash, it can borrow $120,000 from the Federal Reserve. 12 times, the amount, my little light's not working here, but 12 times the amount, 12 to 1 what they have on deposit. So they can borrow $120,000 off that $10,000 deposit. Now, if a person comes in and wants to borrow $120,000, let's say for a mortgage to buy a home, that bank can now lend that person that money because they've borrowed that money from the Federal Reserve based off the cash they have on hand. Make sense? That's how banking works. Now all that works great because the person gets to buy a house, the depositor's got his money in the bank has borrowed money from the Federal Reserve, they're paying a little bit to the Federal Reserve, they're making a lot in interest off of the person that borrowed the money in the mortgage, and everything's going great as long as the person's paying their mortgage. They stop paying their mortgage, well, another issue happens. Under this example, if they stop paying their mortgage and they have to take the house back, the bank, does that local banker still owe that depositor his $10,000 they have on deposit? They sure do. And do they still owe the Federal Reserve the $120,000 they borrowed to loan the money to the person that bought the house? They sure do. So they owe both of those things, and they've lost their asset, which is the mortgage, and now they've got this piece of real hard real estate. And now what do they do with that? Well, here's the deal. It takes about 9 months and costs about $25,000 on average for one foreclosure. That's one at a time. And they're happening in record numbers now. So banks are having to spend real cash, their liquidity, which reduces their borrowing power, to go out and put these hard assets back on their balance sheet. So banks are in the lending business, not in the real estate business. So they don't want your property, they don't want your house. What they want is that liquidity so they can borrow money from the Federal Reserve and turn around and lend it out at a higher rate of interest and make that interest off of that. So lending will become paralyzed, and what do you know? We've been talking about this for years, and sure enough, lending has become paralyzed in the country basically because banks have very low liquid cash. They're using what cash they have on hand. If they've had bad mortgages, they have to go out and reclaim those homes onto their balance sheet. When a house goes through foreclosure, again, when it is on a bank's balance sheet as a mortgage, that's a good thing, right? They're getting that spread. When they have to get rid of the mortgage in foreclosure, because that's what goes away, and now they own the asset, and it's on their balance sheet, it comes onto their liability side. So every time they do a foreclosure, they lose an asset and gain a liability. They go backwards. And they lose the ability, of the cost of $25,000 apiece, to lend money to other people to make up the difference. So lending becomes paralyzed. Banks get lots of homes on their balance sheets, and it's to their best interest to sell those homes and gain cash as quickly as possible, right? So the banks want to sell the homes for as much as they can, as quickly as they can. Make sense? So they try to do that through a lot of different ways. Local realtors, you see a lot of bank-owned signs around, right? You guys see any bank-owned signs in Arizona? Right, Tucson. Other parts of the world, not here. MLS system, the multiple listing services. They'll list a lot of open listings on there. They also do a lot of auctions. They'll have auctions